This message is produced by truthfromgod.com, which is one of hundreds of messages that can be read, heard, and watched at truthfromgod.com. Democracy is the Destroyer, published in the Battle Axe issue 104, September 1976. In order to prosper in nature, man had to learn to live in harmony with the iron laws of nature. The same power that established these universal laws also laid down the principles of a perfect government. Like the law of gravity, these principles of government have been ever present but overlooked for centuries. America will never experience peace and prosperity until it casts off its present form of government, a parliamentary democracy, and completely adopts the divine law of God. Parliamentary democracy as now practiced in the United States turns out to be the initial steps into Marxist communism. Karl Marx drew up the Communist Manifesto, with parliamentary democracy being the door into communism. If parliamentary democracy is examined objectively, then it will be apparent that throughout history, this form of government has always brought about the downfall of the civilizations which have adopted it. It is supposed to be a government controlled by the wishes of the majority through elections, but the people's wishes are never satisfied by an election. Instead of the majority of people controlling government, the majority is controlled by a minority through an overwhelmingly impressive system of information, more accurately called propaganda. This process of educational brainwashing is completely dominated by through propagandizing the masses. This became the masters of public opinion and then of the government by slandering all men of true ability while exalting their stooges. The controlled news media succeeded in the magical art of producing non-entities and making it appear that these puppets were great leaders on whom the hopes of our nation rest. This devastating influence of parliamentary democracy might not be easily recognized by those who follow this news media unless they have learned to think independently and examine the facts for themselves. This institution is totally responsible for the decline and fall of the intellectual and moral level of the ruling body. It is not the aim of the democratic system to bring together an assembly of intelligent and well-informed representatives, but to bring together a group of non-entities who are dependent on others for their views and who can be all the more easily led by the synagogue of Satan. By this method alone, it is possible for the string pullers, who exercise the real control, to remain in the dark, so that personally they can never be brought to account for their misdeeds. Under such circumstances, none of the decisions taken, no matter how disastrous they may turn out for the nation as a whole, can be laid at the door of the individual who is the evil genius responsible for the whole affair. When our United States Congress passes an act or decree which may have the most devastating consequences, nobody bears the responsibility for it. Nobody can be called to account. In practice, no actual responsibility remains, for responsibility arises only from personal duty, not from the obligations that rest with a parliamentary assembly of empty heads. No man of great natural leadership ability who is ready to accept personal responsibilities for his acts will be attracted to such an institution. Only this corrupted cartel can praise an institution which is as corrupt and false as itself. One truth which must always be kept in mind is that the majority can never replace the genius of an individual person. This has been so clear in every area of life, such as art, science, and business, that no one questions this fact. Imagine Thomas Edison asking the majority for its consent to invent the light bulb, or Bell asking the mass how to build a telephone, or Michelangelo asking the people of his day how to paint. With what majority do the armed forces generals consult? Or what populace determine how the atom was to be split? Only in the realm of politics have our people been so beguiled as to adopt a system so destructive as a democracy. Just as 100 blockheads do not equal one man of wisdom, so 100 cowardly politicians do not equal one man of character and are incapable of any line of action that requires moral strength and fortitude. In this world, the creative act of genius always opposes the aimless wanderings of the mass. The parliamentary principle of vesting legislative power in the decisions of the majority rejects the authority of the individual and puts a numerical quota of anonymous heads in his place. The whole purpose of this liberal system, democracy, is to destroy all individual leadership that would possess the courage and ability which would lead our nation to the apex of the world order. It is a sign of our decadent times that the number of idiotic political lackeys grows according as the caliber of individual personality dwindles. A man of real political ability will refuse to be the errand boy for a flock of fools, parliamentary majorities, and they in turn, being the representatives of the mindless brainwashed majority, hate nothing so much as a clear thinking brain. Thus, nobody is left who is willing to risk his position and career in support of a determined line of policy. Now is the time that the mask must be ripped off and the light focused upon this evil democratic institution which now oppresses and controls our people. Through their corrupt democracy, these liberals have set out to destroy all righteous leadership that could inspire this nation to push on to its divine destiny of greatness. Under this democracy, America has started on a downhill drag which must be reversed by destroying this absolute control that has forced everyone onto a plane of mediocrity. It is time to change this tyrannical form of government and adopt the wisdom of our founding fathers who established this nation as a republic trusting in God. The fruits of the democratic tree are corrupt, therefore the tree must be hewn down and cast into the fire. As a contrast to the current evil democratic government, there is a righteous government which was outlined millenniums ago. Its author was the eternal God, not temporal man. Under divine law, the leaders are freely chosen and are obligated to accept full responsibility for all their actions and omissions. The laws are already given. All that is required of them is to righteously administer them. The problems to be dealt with are not put to the vote of the majority. They are decided upon by the individual in accordance with the divine law, and as a guarantee of responsibility for those decisions, he pledges all he has in the world, even his life. Through the implementation of God's divine law, our history thus far would be only an introduction to the volumes that would be written. The glories of the past would be dim in comparison to the brilliance that would radiate from this new creation. God has said it best in Deuteronomy 4:6-8. Keep therefore and do them, statutes and judgments. For this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what nation is there so great, who hath God so nigh unto them, as Yahweh our God is in all things that we call upon him for? And what nation is there so great, that hath statutes and judgments so righteous as all this law? This message is produced by truthfromgod.com, which is one of hundreds of messages that can be read, heard, and watched at truthfromgod.com.